Hey, writers. Today I am truly delighted to have Erin Halden with me. Hey, Erin.
Hey, Sarah.
And the reason why I'm super excited about this conversation is because Erin is my book coach. And so we thought this could be a fun conversation to see why a book coach would also want to work with a book coach. Erin has also had experience being on the receiving end of coaching too. So this is going to be a fun conversation. But Erin, please let me introduce you to everybody just a little bit. I know you well, but others may not. So, Erin has been a developmental editor and a book coach for more than 25 years, working in some capacity with books. And I met her through the Author Accelerator certification program, through which we are both certified. And so that has been a lot of fun working in that way. But you also have experience working with documentary screenwriting, which is so interesting. And I also know you have an MFA, so you definitely like to learn about writing and learn about story as well as writing yourself. So I think that this is all wonderful. And we're going to dig into all of this a bit because these are some of the reasons why I wanted to work with you.
Great.
So maybe I'll start off here with a question that I suspect writers are wondering, is it weird when a fellow book coach says, "Hey, I would like for you to be my book coach"?
No, it's not weird at all. It's actually really exciting and fun because I know that the person that I'm going to be working with, if they're a fellow book coach, they already understand the value of what working with a book coach can bring. And so they're going to come ready to work and roll up their sleeves, and I won't need to convince them of why this is going to be a great thing for your manuscript or your story or a great thing for you as a writer and in your growth as a writer. Book coaches know the value that we bring to both the writer and their story. And so when a book coach calls me up and says, "Hey, I would love you to coach me. Are you interested?" Of course, I'm interested because I know we're going to be jumping in, sharing a lot of the same language, even and that we're going to be able to sort of just hit the ground running.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really well said because one thing that people often wonder about the difference between working with a book coach versus an editor, and just to be clear, you see that Erin also has editing experience. This is not a conversation about saying which one is better or worse. They both have their time and place, I think, within the book writing process. So we're not trying to pit editors against book coaches. But one thing that's a little bit different about book coaching from editing is that the book coach is really like a creative partner that comes alongside you. I've been working with Erin now for at least a year, maybe a year and a half. And so it's a longer term relationship because the book coach is really getting into the dirt and the weeds and the like all the tricky, sticky parts of writing and really helping the writer to work through all that.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And a writer or a coach is different from an editor in that I really see my job as a coach as to figure out what it is the writer is trying to say. Where sometimes an editor might come in and offer some really great insight on your manuscript, but because you don't have a sort of ongoing one-on-one partnership, they may not be able to really like sit down like, "Sarah, what were you actually trying to say with this scene? How can we, not just how do we fix it,
Mhm.
but how do we fix it in a way that it says what you wanted it to say?" I always see my job as a coach is to help the writers figure out what it is they're trying to say, what is their vision, and not what do I think they should be doing, right? Or what
Right.
do I think they should fix this? But like, what were you trying to do? And let's figure out why it didn't quite land and what we can do to make it land in a way that feels true to what you're trying to say. And so that can be a difference too between just someone who's just an editor or versus someone who's also coaching. Is like you said, it's a partnership. It's me listening to you and figuring out what you want to say, and what your vision is, and making sure it's landing on the page the way in a way that feels true to you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure another question, I mean, I'm speculating just based on what folks have asked me in the past, but I think sometimes it surprises writers that a book coach would even think they need to work with a book coach because I've been trained in the same methods, at least as far as book coaching is concerned. We've been trained in the same methods, certified in the same methods. We have similar understanding. Um, but the thing of it is, and tell me if you agree, but I feel like everyone has access to information. You can learn a lot of good stuff for relatively low cost, even maybe even free nowadays. You can also learn a lot of bad stuff, so you have to kind of be careful there. But in my mind, information is cheap. Everybody can get access to information. It's the application of it and getting the feedback on your specific writing. And that's where the real exponential growth starts to happen.
Yes. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think like I always say that, classes and workshops and now searches on the internet can only get you so far. Like you can only read and learn about how character arcs work for so long until you hit a point where you need to know if your specific character arc is working. And even though you and I are both coaches, and you would think that we should be able to answer that about our own story, just like our writers, we're deep inside of our
Mhm.
own story. We're swimming in our story, right? All of the edit decisions that we're making, the things we're including, the things we're not including, it's all swimming around us. And so even for us, as trained as we are, as experienced as we are, we need that outside perspective too. We need someone to come in from the outside and coach us through all of that stuff, right? That is in our head about our stories, and help us find that heart of our story that we're trying to reach. So it's um, being a book coach doesn't mean that you won't ever need a coach, or you won't
Yes.
ever need help again. Right? When we're writers, we're right in the drafting and revision trenches just like everyone else is, and having that outside voice walk us through that and be there with us as we go through this process. I mean, writing is a scary proposition, right? It's
Yeah.
you're going to be going to some maybe dark and vulnerable places, even if you think you're writing something that's lighthearted and fun. If you want it to resonate with readers at some point, you're going to have to start to dig into your personal experience, right? And come up with some gold for readers. And there's risk there, and there's pressure, and it can bring up stuff. And if you're trying to walk that road completely alone, it's really easy to end up overwhelmed, or just sort of mired in doubt, right? No matter
Right.
how experienced you are. Um, so having somebody there with you who's sort of trained, um, but is not necessarily there to teach you, or to make you kind of, or to try to tell help you tell your story their way, but to really kind of zero in on what is it that you're trying to do, and coach you on how to execute it on the page, how to articulate your vision and help you get there. I think is invaluable for everyone. And being a book coach doesn't mean that you don't need that kind of help too. I need that kind of help. I work with a book coach. So yeah, it's worth it no matter where you're at in your writing process.
Yeah, there's something so interesting in the writing world that there's this perception that people should be able to do a lot on their own. And some people can do. a lot on their own. It'd be interesting to see what maybe they would do if they did invite some people into their inner circle to help them. But we seem to have no qualms about professional athletes having a whole entourage of people. You know, you've got your strength and fitness coach, you've got your team sport coach, you've got your nutritionist, like all these people that they enlist to help them be better than they can be. And I just find it so interesting that if someone like Serena Williams is going to hire a coach, then maybe the rest of us should take a hint from that. I mean, she has hit, right, the epitome of success in her field, and yet she still hires people to work with her to help her get better. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think, since we both carry this perspective of having worked as a coach, but then also working with a coach, I'm sure people will be curious to know how we might decide to work with somebody. You and I know a ton of people who are very talented, very qualified, and we could work with any of them. I do hope that writers know like it's a very personal kind of choice, and sometimes it can. I think there's a personality thing that's helpful, but I also think that the specific book that you're working on is also very important. And like so for instance, I came to work with Erin because I knew that she worked a lot with middle grade and YA, and I happened to be writing YA, and I felt that some of Erin's background in her editing and like MFA stuff was going to be helpful for the particular story that I was writing. You always had this desire to work with like the becoming stories, the who am I stories and whatnot, which is exactly what mine was. And personality wise, I felt that we would, we would be just fine that way. But there were specific skills that you had as a book coach that I thought would match my particular book very well. So I don't know. I would just be curious to get your thoughts on that because as coaches, sometimes we will also turn people away if someone comes to us with a story that we know is not a good fit for us as well. Like it can be a two-way street there.
Yeah. Yeah. When someone comes to me looking for help, one of the first things I try to figure out is where in the process are they? Are they still drafting? Are they stuck mid-draft? Are they sort of mired in revision? What stage are they at? That's one of the first things that I want to figure out from for a writer. I don't necessarily restrict myself to only revision or only drafting. I'll take anyone. What I'm looking for is that frustrated, stuck writer, someone who's sort of they've been at it for a while, and they just haven't quite figured out how to. They haven't figured out that invisible architecture that holds story up. I feel like that's one of the final skills to kind of come online for writers. I think, writers often jump in at the sort of outside layers, the plot layers, because as readers and as viewers of movies and TV shows, we're always following the plot. And so writers dive in and they have all these ideas for plot, but they don't actually know how to structure a story to make sure that that plot delivers a resolution. So that's kind of the person that I like to work with is somebody who's been at it for a while. Maybe they have a handful of chapters or they have a whole draft, but they're sort of at this stuck point where they need to learn how stories are put together, what that invisible architecture looks like, because that is the point where a lot of writers get stuck and they start to spin in neutral. And it's also a point where workshops and classes can't help you. You need direct help on your
Yes.
manuscript. And when you get that direct help on your manuscript and you start to see not just how do character arcs work, but how does my character arc work and where is it showing up on the page and where is it not? That is often a huge growth point where like if you can start to master that, you're going to take a big leap up in your story writing. So that's I like to catch writers at that point because that's a really exciting point. Like the writer might be frustrated, but I know that they're on the edge of a potential breakthrough here, and I like to help them begin to see like what they need to do to jump up to that next level. So that's kind of that's what I'm looking for in a client. And I like to work with stuck writers too because I know what it's like to be one. I have been there myself. I've spent years spinning in neutral. So I know I have nothing but sympathy for writers who are in that position. I know what it's like to be stuck there. And so I like to help writers out because I know how it feels to get to that other side and realize that, oh my God, I just learned something huge and I'm a better writer for it. So I like to get writers to that point. That's exciting for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting too because people might experience a problem while they're writing. Like even veteran writers can have lots of experience getting a handful of novels written, but there's something about each individual project that presents its own challenges. And so like that in my case, that was like my stuckness because I was working on a project um, in a style that was very different for me, very different for me. And I kind of felt like I think I'm going to need some help. So, I mean, when I came to you, I had an entire first draft written, but then we were able to like really get in there. And I know in particular, because I have two main characters, and one of them had a very, shall I say, a flabby character arc that needed to be strengthened, and one needed more like emotional depth to it and stuff like that. And these are all things, as you mentioned, as coaches, we know how to see them, but because we're in our own work, it's hard to know what's coming across to another person and what is being hidden or, you know, kept away from the reader because we haven't actually put it out there.
Right. Yes, yes. Authors' burden of knowledge is a real thing.
Yeah,
It is. There's so
for
many.
real.
We think we've gotten something on the page. We know everything, and we're like, so of course the reader knows everything, right? And then we realize we've left really important context off the page all over the place because we're like, well, we already know it. It's obvious to us, right? Why would we
Yes.
put that on the page? But yeah, the reader doesn't even see it. Yeah. So yeah, so your manuscript was actually, from a structure standpoint, was in really good shape. It was really digging into those character arcs and
Characters. It's the feelings, Erin. It's all the feelings.
all the feelings.
Well, it's so funny too because I don't know if you have this experience when working with your coach as a writer, but I could come to Erin and be like, I know that this is going to be a problem for me. And I'm always very upfront with writers about this too. Like I am not the person to come to work on your sensory detail. Do not come to me for that kind of help. It is a problem, a challenge. Let's call it a challenge. And so, poor Erin, I'd have to feel like, Erin, I'm not going to be particularly good at this, and you need to feel free to like keep pointing this out, even if it's, time after time that I still haven't quite mastered that sensory detail. But do you find that because of your book coach training, like when you're the writer in that coaching relationship, do you find that there's at least an awareness of areas where you could improve, even if you're not quite sure how you're going to do that yet?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely know what I want from a coach when I walk into it. Like I know what my weaknesses are. For me, my big weakness is drafting. Like it's just drafting for me is really hard, and it's really scary. I'm so jealous of the people who can just sit down and just whip out a draft. I'm not that person. It's a slow process. And it is the part of the process where all of my writing demons come out, where it's like, what do I think who do I think I am? Like, who's gonna read this? This is crazy. What am I doing? And so for me, I know that I need somebody who's gonna talk me off the cliff, right? When I'm like ready to throw everything out the window because I'm stuck, but also somebody who I can keep talking um, about development with, right? I
Yeah.
need to I need someone to talk that through with. I can't sit by myself and develop a whole story. For me, brainstorming with someone else is what I need from a coach. Like I don't really know what's gonna, I was thinking maybe this could happen next, but that might affect this. And then, like I need to talk that out loud with someone who can throw questions back at me. Well, if you did that, how might that fix this? You know, well, what if this? What if you tried that? That's what I'm looking for from a coach because for me, that's where um, things get shaky for me. Once I'm in revision, that's I love revision and I'm on good ground. But but that drafting and development phase, I want a partner to brainstorm with and to talk with and to not feel so alone and kind of locked away in my tower trying to come up with something all by myself. So yeah, I'm much more at since becoming a coach, I know
Hmm.
exactly what it is that I want from a coach. And I look for when I'm going to work with somebody, I look for someone who I know is going to be strong in that area, who's going to be strong on development and brainstorming.
Yeah. Yeah. And since you brought that up with the brainstorming, it's probably good for us to maybe offer a public service announcement that there's a difference between the coach, as Erin just described, a coach helping draw the story out of her, as opposed to the coach giving her a tally of like, here's the plot points you're going to hit.
Right.
That latter situation is really more of what you would expect in a work for hire kind of situation. Like, here, we're going to write this novel within this series, and here's the beats that you're going to hit. Now go forth and write. Whereas a book coach helping you to get these ideas, it's still about like an iron sharpening iron, if you will, but you bringing the ideas and the coach just reflecting back whether there will be pitfalls with that or whether that might take the story in a different direction. And is that what you want to do? And these are all great questions to ask as long as it's being done as you've described and not with a coach bringing their own agenda.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. You definitely don't want a coach with their own agenda or a prescriptive style of coaching or they're telling you what to do. You really want it to be that partnership where they're listening to you and helping you articulate your authorial vision for it, and then supporting you as you're trying to get that executed on the page, right? So my coach is always almost every conversation with her is just filled with questions. She's always questioning as I'm trying to talk through my story out loud. She's always just asking me questions to help me hone what my ideas are, so that I get closer to what it is I'm
Yeah.
trying to say, so that I can then get that on the page. So yeah, that's a very important distinction to make for sure.
Well, because I do think sometimes writers might also get nervous that someone is going to try to change their story. But it's like we're not really trying to change your story so much as to point out areas within your story that need to be tightened, strengthened. Some areas might have to go, right?
Right. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that someone's trying to like manipulate your ideas.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
I would be remiss if we didn't we've talked about some of like the craft benefits that we've experienced. I would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the more pragmatic reasons. Coaching has at least been helpful for me. I can't speak to your experience, but I started working with Erin and it wasn't I think for about somewhere between 4 to 6 months, things felt like everything was fine, and I was doing the program, Erin, and I'm turning in the pages and getting the feedback. And then I had some situations in life, we'll just leave it at that, that kind of like pulled the rug out a bit. And some being much harder than others to the point that it was like impacting my, we can acknowledge that creative brain is different than executive brain, right?
For sure.
We can still like do some things maybe and carry on with life to some degree, but there are some times when circumstances really mess with the ability to think creatively. And I definitely had that experience in the last year or so while working with Erin. And so, one thing that has been really beneficial for me is I don't believe that I would have, I did not make progress as quickly as I would have liked or as I had planned, but I don't think I would have made progress at all had I not been working, in this case, working with you. Um, and I don't know if you have found it's like an accountability on steroids.
It is. It is. Yeah, for sure.
And it's
Yeah.
not because you're there saying like, send me my pages, send me my
Right.
pages. That's not it at all. It's kind of hard to describe, but because you have this nice working relationship with somebody, it's like you want to honor that relationship and you want to be respectful of like, I know I'm supposed to be turning things in. And there were some times where my turn-ins were much fewer in pages than they could have been, but they were at least something. There was at least something there, and I know that I would not have continued working through that hard period. I would have set the book aside for a bit, I think. And maybe for some of you, I don't want to like shame people who are going through maybe really difficult circumstances of health or grief or things like this. I don't
Mhm.
want to do that at all. But I think sometimes the easy thing to do is to put something aside and let it collect dust,
Mhm.
as opposed to like just trying to make some incremental steps the best that we can. And working with you really helped me to do that.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. I know accountability is a big deal for me too. When I'm working with a coach, there's just something about you want to show up. And I think I like what you said about respect because I do think I want to respect my coach. She chose me as a client. She brought me on. She could have brought someone else. That spot could have gone to someone else, but she chose me. And I want to show up for that, right? I want to, make sure that I'm showing up for my half of the partnership that we've just agreed to. And it has kept me going on months where it probably would have been easier to let it slide, right? Or it's forced me to not let maybe I'm stuck on some aspect of plot and I'm like, I just don't know what I should do there. Um, and I'll be like, well, nope, I have to turn something in next week. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to keep working on it until I come up with something, right? Even if it's maybe not the exact right thing yet. So it can be a good way to push through moments when it would be easier to walk away, which is, as you said, not to say there are times when you need to walk away and that's okay too. But sometimes we can be a little too quick to walk away.
Yeah.
Or we can let doubt start to come
Mm,
in and say, I don't know what's going to happen here next. And so I just throw my hands up and I just walk away. Showing up for a coach, for me at least, means that I don't throw up my hands and walk away. And I'm nice to myself and I say, hey, maybe whatever I'm putting on the page right now isn't the final thing. And that's
yeah.
okay because um, sometimes you have to write it the wrong way to know how to write it the right way. So yeah, I definitely think that uh, I just lost my idea. But yeah, it's yeah, very good to be working with someone who can keep you on your toes a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and to have to do the hard thing. And I think this is why athletes probably get,
Yeah.
some coaches too, because no one's going to willingly do like the 10 hill sprints, for instance.
Yes.
It's like you need someone to say, we're going to do those sprints today. And I know that there were times where I mean, Erin wouldn't mention this, but I will. My midpoint was a hot mess and it needed to be rewritten. And I knew that it was going to be rewritten. And I knew, generally speaking, what was going to happen. But like Erin, I have a distaste for writing a first draft. And this would have kind of been like a first draft because I was having to rewrite that material completely. And it's like you can only kick the can for for so long.
Yes.
Because at some point you've done all the other things, and now it's like, okay, the next deadline has to be this midpoint, and the thing that you've been putting off finally has to be addressed.
Yes. Yes.
What are you
Yeah,
gonna do?
no one in the world is asking you to write your book, right? Which means you're making this choice to spend your time a
Mm,
certain way, to do a thing that can be fun, but can also be, very intellectually challenging.
yeah.
And so having a book coach to show up for, absolutely, it's like, you're going to get out there and do those sprints that your coach is making you do, not because you want to, but because you know that's what you're going to need to do to get to where you want to go. And I think that's where the accountability that comes with book coaching can be so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so maybe one other thing that would be helpful to talk about because you and I have both been students in environments where whether it's a webinar or a class, or in your case, a lot of classes to go through your MFA, a lot of instructional material for our certification program and all this. So clearly we both value learning. We both value reading and all of the things. But you had mentioned earlier, like there just is a difference when we make the investment, and it's going to be, listen, we'll be real here. It's an investment of time, energy, and money. It
Mhm.
is an investment of all of those things to work with a book coach. It's an investment of all those things for most areas of writing, but like maybe the levels fluctuate a bit depending on what you decide to do. But you had mentioned like at some point a class that anyone can take. Those are all good things, and we've all done them. And they are part of the writer's journey, and you absolutely should do them. But there is some point where you kind of need to make this transition where we stop focusing on trying to consume so much and flip more into like putting things into practice and taking a more tactical, active kind of approach. I think you and I both agree on this pretty well because, yes, we have taught these things as well, but you and I both tend to heavily favor working with writers in either a small group or a one-to-one capacity, which is different than just offering instruction to the masses. So I would just be curious, because you could be teaching classes to the masses. I mean, especially with your MFA degree, you would have some opportunities. What is it about working in a closer relationship with writers that has made you decide this is where I want to plant my flag, if you will?
Yes. Yeah. Um, so part of my MFA education was working one-on-one with a particular
Mhm.
faculty member. And that is the point at which I started to actually really make progress because I wasn't just learning about this craft in the abstract and then trying to go back and apply it in my manuscript and wonder like, did I get it? Is it working? I don't know. That direct back and forth of like, yes, you got it. Like, this is great. Let's move forward. Or no, you're not quite there yet. Let's rework these pages a little bit more. That's where I started to see real progress in my own writing. And I got to see my manuscript, which was this frustrating hot mess when I started in grad school, turn into the thing I always wanted it to be. And that is just the best feeling in the world.
Mm.
So coming out of my MFA, I knew that this is the thing that is actually going to help writers. That really close attention, that one-on-one attention, that where the other person that is not just a teacher in a classroom, but they're like as familiar with your manuscript as you are, right? And they're able to help you understand how to level it up and make it better by working directly with your material, not giving you some sort of abstract idea that you have to try to apply on your own. And so I just felt like this is the help that's missing out there for
Mm,
the people who are going to the classes and the workshops and the conferences, even going to the MFA programs. Not all MFA programs are structured the way mine was. I feel really grateful that mine was structured that way. But this is it's just such a huge pain point for writers is, well, is my story working? And I felt like this one-on-one book coaching style of working with writers was much more true to what I felt writers really needed. And again, it's nothing against the classes and the workshops. You can learn a lot there. I still take classes and workshops. I still go to those. But in terms of actually really truly helping writers get to that point where they're happy with their manuscript, I think they need somebody who's willing to dive into it with them and really help them see it. And I just think that classes and workshops can't really do that for you the way that a book coach can. So that's why I went this direction instead. And I love working one-on-one with writers. We've worked together for a little over a year, and I love that every 2 weeks I get to see Sarah and I get to see more pages of her story. And you get to know the person, and the more I get to know the person, the more I get to understand who they are, and I can help them sh make sure that who they are is showing up on the page, which is also a really important part of writing. It's not just that you got the story right, that you got it in a way that's true to you and that's unique to you and has your unique storyteller fingerprints on it. And again, that's something one-on-one coaching can do that a classroom setting just can't quite accomplish.
yeah, that's really well said. I have nothing to add.
I have a question for you.
Yes, please.
Did being on the other side, right, being the
Mhm.
writer instead of the coach, anything surprise you about being on that side of the table?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, okay, so I will say we've talked about various stages in the process, and because, like you, I'm a very slow drafter, and I don't like to be rushed through that process. So I've been very resistant to working with a coach while writing a first draft. I do, for me personally, I resist that. Having said that, I do like getting feedback from a coach when I'm in the planning stages for a book. Um, so I had experienced some coaching in a more like minimal time container package, maybe a month or two, let's say, um, to help with some of that planning stuff. And then I would go off on my own. This is working with you is the first time that I've had the privilege to work with someone on a more long-term basis. And I think that has been wonderful for many reasons, some of which have already been mentioned. Just, you know, keep going because writing a book takes a long time. If you're going to do it well, writing a book takes a long time. And making sure to stay on target and working with a book coach is lovely because of having it's almost like having, well, not almost, you get editorial feedback as you're doing it so that you don't have to make it all the way through the thing, turn it in, get feedback on the whole novel, rewrite the whole novel, turn it back in. And like every year, you're getting maybe one time feedback to try and figure that all out on your own. You can make
Yeah.
corrections along the way a lot more easily. So I find it to be very time efficient as well, which is not like a glamorous thing to say. But I have really come to value the coaching relationship just because we always tell our writers like you're going to see improvement like your eighth deadline of pages is already going to be improved from your first deadline of pages because you're training your brain
Mhm.
to work on the things that you're working on. And I have found that to be true for myself. So I don't I don't know if I don't know if I'd say it's like shocking or anything like that to me because I kind of knew what coaching would be like, but I didn't quite expect to feel as strongly about it being on the writer's side. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. It does.
Yeah, so I would definitely advocate for it. And depending on what kind of writer you are, Erin and I have mentioned parts of our process um, where we value having some coaches will only work during certain, like some coaches might only work with you if you're planning, and then they'll send you off to another coach or on your own, or some coaches only want to see you after they've have a full draft, for instance. And then, there are coaches in between doing all the stuff. But I think writers should know that like it's not going to be a savior relationship. I mean, it's still going to be a lot of hard work. Working with a coach doesn't take away the hard work of writing, but it does make you better at it. And I think that it also makes you take it more seriously.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
true. And I think, and I hope, by the time someone's done working with me, that they feel more in the driver's seat of their own writer's career,
Yeah.
right? I think sometimes writers come to me, maybe they've been buried under conflicting feedback, or they are, they've gone to so many classes and so many workshops, they haven't recognized their own seat of authority as the writer. They're just constantly looking externally, right?
Yes.
So my hope too, when someone comes to me and they're at that stage, obviously they're looking for external help, they're looking to me. But that by the time we're done working with each other, they're able to really sit in the seat of authority on their manuscript and have a sort of internal satisfaction with what they're doing, rather than constantly trying externally to look for validation. They're sort of internally validating.
Yeah.
So that's also something I want to get writers to, because once you're internally validating yourself as a writer and internally validating your story, all sorts of things start to become easier for you, right?
It's so true.
It doesn't mean that the writing will get easier, but it means that you'll have a better you'll be better at evaluating your own strengths and weaknesses, and you'll know like, okay, I'm good at that, but I'm not good at that. I need to work on that. It's just once you can sort of internally validate yourself as a writer, um, it's like a step up as a
Yeah,
professional even, right?
it
That
totally
self-awareness.
is.
So that's also my goal with every writer, is that I leave them feeling like the authority of their story and that they are validated as a writer.
Well, it's funny you say that because we'll joke about this in the coaching community itself, but it's not uncommon for a writer as they're working with a coach, in the later deadlines to be like, oh, I gotta fix this. Like you're almost doing this work as you're writing because you know that the coach is gonna say that. So like in my example of working with Erin, it's like, oh, she's gonna make me say something about the physical space. I'll get to a point and be like, she's gonna say I need a physical detail. And it's because I do. Um, and so that's what's funny is because you are learning to develop and strengthen different muscles, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, that has definitely been my experience.
Yes, it's my experience with coaching as well. Yeah.
More internal validation for sure. This is
Yeah.
fantastic. All right. Well, writers, I obviously I have loved working with Erin. I hope that you've gotten that from this interview. But Erin, what kind of projects, because we did mention writers, please, like if you are writing something and want to get coached, it's to your advantage to find a good fit for both you and your book. So I've got some great friends here who are writing horror. Please no, I will not coach you on that. I am a scaredy cat. So I might think you're a fabulous human, but your book might might not be a good fit for me. So Erin, what kind of projects do you
Yeah.
like to work on the most?
Yeah, so I love working on middle grade. I take middle grade YA and select adult. For middle grade and YA, I'll take most anything. I love it all the different genres from contemporary to speculative. I really enjoy working on all of it. For adult, I stick mostly in the speculative realm. So sci-fi, fantasy, or some combination of that, a dystopian. I the adult world of books can be so big,
Mhm.
um, and some of the conventions there can start to get really specific in a way that I don't think is true for kid lit.
I agree.
So right, like thriller, I'm probably not the best fit for like a real true classic thriller type book because that has a lot of very specific conventions to it. Same with mystery and romance. I'm not a good fit for romance. That has a very specific reader expectations and conventions that go into writing that. But when it comes to adult, I do limit myself to speculative because that is a genre that I know pretty well. But mostly what I coach is middle grade and YA, a lot of YA, and I love YA. As you said, I love who am I stories. Like I love watching people wrestle with who they are and who they want to be and working through a story where they're wrestling with that. So that's kind of those are the stories that I take. And like I said before, um, I don't necessarily limit myself to revision or drafting. I want someone who's been at it for a while. I want that person who's taken the classes and the workshops and has wrestled a bit with story on the page, and has just sort of reached that point where the classes and the workshops aren't helping them anymore, because that's the point where I feel like I can do the most good for them and bring the most value.
Yeah, I love it. And where can people find you?
You can find me at erinhalden.com. And you can find, I have a blog there. I have links to my Substack there. I also write on Substack and some resources for writers as well. And you can, on my Work With Me page, you can see the different ways that I work with writers.
Fabulous. Okay, writers. Thank you very much. Hopefully, this was a fun conversation for you, as it was for us. We obviously love the work that we do. We love the writers that we work with, the books that we get to see shape, right? We get to like see books go from some kind of blobbish type creative thought to something beautiful and complete. And it is wonderful, wonderful work, and we enjoy that work, but we also enjoy working with others who enjoy doing that work. So we thank you all for joining us. And Erin, I'm sure we'll have another conversation sometime here in the future.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you all next time. Bye.